Good evening, lovely people. This is Professor Matt, and tonight I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Celtic Cam, in what we foresee as kind of a sort of series within the podcast. So, Byron Robb and Chelsea Mike, they have their card shows, they do the women's circuit. Right, I know Cam, you and Mike instead sometimes get together and just do like cricket or rugby exclusive pods. Those of you who have been watching the show for any length of time know that Cam and I support two clubs from two cities that are in some ways linked. And so, partially because of time, right? The pod tends to run probably longer than it should anyway. Uh, there's only so many topics we can cover. And even then, there are certain topics that if you are a supporter of Celtic or Liverpool, it hits you slightly different, or you may look at what's going on differently because of your experience rooting for your particular club. So this series is going to be called Celtic and Scouse. And we'll probably record two or three of these per year. Just going through topics which either we missed on the pod or, got there were aspects of the story that we wanted to cover in more detail. So, Cam, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, this is what happens when you drink with members of the podcast. Me and Cam were out a couple weeks ago having a few beers, and we got talking about certain things, and I was like, we're not going to have a chance to really talk about this on the podcast proper. Let's just record like an extended short where we cover some of these topics. And right, we also started talking about the sort of natural affinity between Liverpool and Celtic. And so I think what we should do first before we get into said topics is let, tell the audience why we're doing this, right? I mean, some people know, but some people don't know, and some people don't know the full extent of it. So, floor is yours, my man. Like, what do you have down? Why the connective tissue? 'Cause I have some things in my notes, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
For me, the first thing that really stands out strongly is this kind of working class affinity that the majority of supporters belong to. In Liverpool, you've got Liverpool, you've got um blanking on something. Everton, thank you. Everton, and it's kind of a similar sort of dynamic without the sectarianism
Yeah.
of Celtic and Rangers. But the Celtic fans are known much more for their sort of working class ethic, same way that Liverpool was. And actually, a lot of people don't realize that there's a massive, massive, massive contingency of people in Liverpool with Irish roots as well. And as we know, Celtic has those Irish roots. So, back in the day, there was some of that kind of Catholicism, Protestantism in Liverpool, but after World War II, that was kind of shaken up a bit. There was actually a really, really good program to intermingle Protestants and Catholics to live in the same area, which
Yes.
really got rid of that sectarianism. As a broad kind of overview, there's a few different elements to really what has tied Liverpool and Celtic together, not just you'll never walk alone. So,
Yeah, so there are a couple things in my notes that go right back to what you were saying and may add some layers to it. The first, and I think the most obvious thing, both Glasgow and Liverpool are port cities. And that is, I think, a crucial dynamic because with ports come trade, comes industry, which is where you get the working class and where you get immigrants, right? And,
yep.
both Liverpool and Glasgow, they're port cities. They're cities that were shaped by patterns of immigration. Uh, Liverpool has the oldest existing Chinese community anywhere in the UK. There's obviously the Irish connection that goes, well, it predates the famine, but in a big way, you get waves of Roman Catholic Irish immigrants coming into both cities in the famine. South Asians, right, from the Indian subcontinent, West Indians. And I know in Glasgow you have Jamaica Street, right?
Yep.
Uh, and, I have to throw this out there too, not so much in Glasgow, but we exist there too. Uh, Polish communities that had existed since the late 19th century, which, because Poland tends to be dysfunctional, is constantly being renewed by different waves. So you have ports, you have immigrants, you have the working class, many of whom are immigrants, and you have a strong affinity to what I guess we can call old labor, like
Yeah.
the Tony Blair wave of labor without labor never set in, really, in most of Scotland, I have to say,
Right.
uh, but certainly not on Merseyside. And so I have just down here in my notes, Maggie Thatcher nightmare fuel. Because in a very real way, both cities are everything the Tories, establishment Britain
Yeah.
hates and despise. We're too
Right.
multicultural. We're too working class. Uh, we have this weird connection with the British Empire, but it's an easy, weird connection with the
Yeah.
British Empire, right? Both cities benefited from imperialism, but at the same time brought in a lot of people who ideologically are dialectically opposed to imperialism, right? And also the connections between the clubs. I mean, Kenny Dalglish is a club legend at both Celtic and Liverpool. And there's no sort of weird ill will that, a guy who starts off at Celtic shows up at Liverpool or vice versa. And this happens a lot with a lot of our Irish players. Guys who make their name at Liverpool go to Celtic to sort of, I don't know, I shouldn't say semi retirement, but
Yeah.
ease into the back end of their careers.
Sure.
And yeah, and you said it, it also goes right down to the fucking songs. Uh,
Yeah.
so in a lot of ways, certain stories in the world of football resonate with us slightly differently. And there's two tonight in particular that we want to highlight. The first, of course, is the David Coote saga, which I don't even know if did you were on the pod last week. Was that even addressed?
I don't think if it was. I don't frankly remember if it was. I mean, it's something that I think definitely needs to be addressed. And I don't know if you've checked the news in the past hour.
Oh,
Yeah, so now they're saying that he has been handing out cards depending on bets placed. So there's some betting fraud that
oh,
essentially is being investigated very seriously now. So the tail gets bigger and bigger.
so before we get into what he said, there's just a couple general observations. And when the story first broke on November 11th, it came through the pod chat. And
Right.
two of us literally had the same reaction. It was like, why did you film yourself doing this? This is the stupidest. So this guy isn't particularly bright. Let's just be clear. He also needs new friends because the people he thinks are his friends are not his friends.
Yeah.
Because the initial video in question gets leaked. Just like 4 days later, another video of him snorting cocaine at some point gets leaked. And kudos to these foreign refs because they were like, our asses are on the line too.
Right.
Text messages from the Euros where he was like, hey man, do you want to snort coke at halftime?
Right.
Got released. So, okay. And now gambling. Good job, David Coote. Uh, Such a hateable human being. So,
Really.
on
Yeah.
November 11th, just a couple weeks ago, a video got leaked of David and just some random guy, like his buddy. Uh, Maybe high, maybe not high. We don't know. Uh, Ranting about, Liverpool And look, refs are human beings. Refs are always going to have a little bit of bias, although that should not impact decisions. More about that in a little bit. Uh, but the video, it went over the top in its vitriol. And there were two things that, as a Liverpool fan, struck me immediately. Uh, One which I will give the mainstream media some credit because they understand that there's a conflict between English and Scouse.
Yeah.
Other which no one wanted to talk about, and I think that's a problem. So, it was like F Liverpool, F Liverpool, but then it was we hate Scousers.
Right.
Okay. So I could be that Liverpool fan right now, and I'm not, and I'll tell you why I'm not when this is all wrapped up. Because when we first talked about it, you looked me in the eye and said, nothing's going to get replayed. And it's like, yeah, I know. Like, but what is to be done is ask the correct Leninist question. What is to be done? So when you say I hate Scousers, for me, that screams every stereotype, every misconception, or in some ways, conception, but I recognize this and I hate this, that you see from a lot of particularly middle class, south of, let's say, Birmingham Brits.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, they have this notion that Liverpool is this weird place where gang violence is a problem. It was because Margaret Thatcher said this on TV.
Right.
I'm going to defund this city. Literally. And so when you create poverty, you create gang violence. Uh,
Right.
but again, this like weird stereotype of this is some weird place where, everyone has mullets, everyone sings songs about their weird football team. And, uh, again, these misconceptions, but also, too, look, we think the royal family are a bunch of bricks. Not, there are a lot of English that don't like that. We call out, particularly the Tories, when they effectively criminalize poverty, uh,
Right.
when they blame the victims of a stadium disaster for the stadium disaster. So, for a lot of England, we're public enemy number one. So, when I heard that, it was like, okay, this isn't just you don't like my football club. You don't like our ethos, you don't like the
Right.
city. And that for me more even opened up the door to maybe there was some nefarious stuff that went on here.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was your reading of that, but that certainly was mine.
No, I think that was said fantastically. I mean, I think everyone can agree anytime you single out a group in a population, because of where they're from, what they believe, anything like that, not a good thing. It's overall there's generally something nefarious behind that. And yeah, Scousers will see themselves almost as being kind of like it's like Sicilians in Italy. They're not necessarily Italian, they're Sicilian. They're their own kind of group that exists within a country.
Speaking as someone whose Italian roots are squarely located in the Naples region, that makes total sense to me because Neapolitans, even though they're Italians, have a very weird relationship with the rest of Italy.
Exactly.
Uh, and so when you hear things like this, your worst sort of nightmares about the way that, be it Italy, be it, English society feels about you just come up. And that paranoia,
Right.
that sort of weird victim complex comes up. Uh,
Hmm.
the other aspect of his video, which no one really wanted to talk about, was when he started having at club. And okay, you don't like Jurgen Klopp. And I came on this podcast a lot and I was like, Klopp needs to chill the F out because he's making himself public enemy number one. But maybe in ways that I had not even conceived. One of the reasons why both of our clubs are disdained by a certain segment of the British population is because, well, for Celtic, it's really easy. It's the Catholic, it's the connection to Irish republicanism, etc.
Yeah.
For Liverpool, we've been effing good for, there were periods when we weren't, but we've been effing good. And we've been effing good being the least English club in England. In the
Yeah.
70s, we won stuff with Scotsmen.
Yeah.
80s, all I have to say is John Barnes. Uh,
Yeah.
and the team that Klopp built, I
Yeah.
mean, geez, it's like the United Nations. And
Yeah.
he's not English either.
Right.
So, Mr. Coote decided to call the Kaiser a see you next Tuesday. I believe that is the best code for
That's perfect.
what
Yep.
he said, which is not good,
No.
but he ethnicized it. He made the point not once, but twice to make certain that you knew he was a German see you next Tuesday.
Right.
Okay. So the I hate Scousers thing probably tells me a lot about your worldview. You ethnicizing my manager, who you think is a naughty word for women's parts, that tells me exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
That confirms it. It's like I'm fairly certain I knew who you voted for in the last election, and like, yeah, we know who you are, my friend. Uh, and so immediately after that, I went and I did some digging. Uh, because I was like, because it's funny, the match day before the video was leaked was when we played Villa. Actually, were you at my apartment for that match, the Villa
The
match,
Villa game?
or
I
was
think it
it
was. Was that the Villa game I was
that
there?
was the Villa match? That's when
Yeah.
we went to the Lithuanian Festival.
Yep.
The first goal, uh, the clear foul on Mo, which wasn't called. Like, thank God Nunez put it in. Otherwise, that was going to be a goal kick.
Right.
Uh, and he was responsible for that. And so, I mean, obviously there was that, but then it was like, let's go back and look at his back catalog when refereeing Liverpool.
Yeah.
There's some interesting,
There
just
are. I saw the
really
same things.
interesting incidents. So
Yeah.
let me take you back to 2019, 2020. Uh, 1-1 draw against Burnley. We probably should have won that game 1-0. Burnley got a very suspect penalty in the dying moments. And that's the match. I think I sent you that you know, short video. That's when our boy Robbo lost his mind and called
Oh, yeah. Okay.
because he wanted to put hands on Mr. Coote.
Right.
So he was the head ref in that match. Uh, on VAR. Ooh. So 2020, 2021, the season we're defending the title. He is on the VAR in the 2-2 draw against Everton, where Jordan Pickford took out Virgil van Dijk. Richarlison attempted to kill Thiago. And Sadio Mane's game-winning goal was chalked off for I don't know what body part, maybe a fingernail being offside. And I had forgotten he was on VAR for that. The big one, the one that was most egregious, because I think Richarlison did get ultimately red carded,
hmm
was the no call on Pickford leaving his area and coming out and killing my center back like a loser.
Right. I
And,
remember
and, and after the match, when asked, David Coote said, I forgot to check it.
that. You
I
had one
forgot.
job.
That's your job. Your job is to check it. I forgot to check it. But
Wow.
so there's that. And then 2020 to 2020, excuse me, uh last year, 2022, 2023, uh, or 2023, 2024, the match against Arsenal, where Odegaard straight up became a basketball player. The clear handball, uh,
Okay.
also David Kudamvar. I don't know whether he was asked whether he checked it or he forgot to check it or not.
Yeah,
So there are some clear incidents here.
for sure.
So I'll say my piece because you said when we were talking about this, nothing's getting replayed. No, no, it's not. And Virgil isn't going to be healthy that season. And we because the thing is, if we have healthy center backs that season, I think we defend our title.
Hmm.
Uh, none of that's going to happen. And maybe this is the difference between, I don't know, like actual leftists and like liberals. Actual leftists are like stuff like, the Industrial Revolution happened. Okay, what the hell do we do about it? That's the way I'm focused here. It's like this
Right,
happened, but now what do we do about it? How do we change this?
right,
I know the two of us in conversation mentioned there needs to be independent oversight. The criminals cannot police criminals anymore. That
right,
can't be allowed. Right. And so it the EPL and the refs, it can't be like Wall Street in this country where banks police banks, billionaires police billionaires. You need independent arbitrators here. Uh the other thing, and this is really simple, but getting change put through Little Britain and their love of tradition is hard. This is the perfect time to start introducing more technology that can take some of these decisions
right.
actually out of human hands. And in particular, automated goddamn offside.
Yeah,
Good enough for the Champions League. It's good enough
right.
for continental Europe. It's going to be good enough for Kazakhstan next year. Come on, England. Really?
Yeah,
Really? If you want to avoid another David Coote situation, you have to, you have to, you have to get on board with that. Because I think what this shows us too, I feel somewhat vindicated. VAR is fine. VAR in the hands of these people is not fine.
right,
And I know I keep bringing up Maggie Thatcher tonight, but I feel I have to. Maggie Thatcher said, the best way to kill social services are to defund them, and then in 10 and 15 years, the people that need them will want them to go away. I feel this is what they're doing with VAR in England.
right,
VAR should be useful, but they always were kind of resistant to it. And so maybe if you make VAR so foobar to the point
right.
that it doesn't work, they'll scrap it. And that sounds conspiratorial, but like this, we've seen this before.
Been done in Scandinavian countries.
Yeah,
I forget which country it was. It might be Finland or somewhere like that, but they introduced VAR. It was so bad that it got scrapped, and the same exact theory was there that, if you make it so broken, then everyone's gonna be like, all right, just, get rid of it, whatever. It's not done anything positive for us. So I don't think that's way out there. Because as you say, England is steeped in tradition. They don't like change so much, especially when it comes to football, which they see as a cornerstone to England. So I can see
their
it.
identity and the fact that it has been embraced, I think, continentally. Those German "see you next Tuesdays" use it, therefore we can't. Uh,
Right.
so, do you want to add anything about Kootgate? Because I think we kind of.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll say is I really do think, what you brought up about having an independent organization really monitoring this is really essential. I think you made some really great comparisons, the banks, monitoring themselves sort of thing clearly doesn't work. It's a real shame because the Premier League is, as its name suggests, supposed to be the or one of the premier leagues in the world. And when you see things like this and you just know that there's a way to not necessarily, you're never going to prevent everything 100%, but a way to at least make an effort and show that you're making an effort to prevent things like this happening in the future. And as you said, how to look to the future. When something like this does happen, what do you do next? Do you sit on it and say, we're going to have an investigation and hope it disappears in a few months? No, you want transparency in these situations. And I think that's not something, historically we've seen with football referees and the organizations that manage them. So, I just all I wanted to say was I think it is important that we do sort of put into place these independent organizations and not just the Premier League, but I mean, I know Scotland could do with it, for example, and I'm sure there are plenty, Syria and stuff could do with it as
Oh
well.
God,
So,
yeah. I mean, they might have more match fixing scandals there.
yeah,
You'd find out, but yeah, no, absolutely. And again, an independent body overseeing this and the introduction of because something as simple as automated offsides takes a lot of these decisions out of their hands.
right.
So we're going to turn to the next topic, which I kind of knew we weren't going to touch upon on the pod proper. And I was going to record a separate short, but then I was like, no, Cam, you got to come on. Uh, it's the events that occurred in Amsterdam a few weeks ago on November
Mm.
7th, uh, when Maccabi Haifa took on Ajax. And what I really want to talk about is the ridiculous double standard and the really nonsensical, I'll say it, lies that I heard coming out of most of the mainstream media on this.
Mhm.
First of all, we at the Too Many Guys Soccer Show do not condone ass beatings, but I literally I did my wrap up sessions with my uh sections today. There is no such thing as a random act of violence. All violence has a context. And the ass beatings that were handed out to those Maccabi Haifa fans
Yeah.
had a very real context and very real provocation. So this is the Europa League, which is kind of crazy to think that Ajax is in the Europa League, but they were bad last year.
Yeah.
So they're hosting Maccabi Haifa. And here's another thing. And shout out to a former student of mine who I still occasionally get coffee with, who is, well, Anglo-Jewish. She was born in the East End. Uh,
Okay.
she is a diehard Tottenham fan and a diehard Ajax fan. But she has brain cells and she's not a, Zionist apologist. Far from it, in fact. So an Israeli team is coming to Amsterdam, which is an incredible, talk about a port city and an incredibly
Yeah.
multicultural port city.
Right.
They're playing Ajax, who is partially because of Amsterdam and patterns of migration, etc., is an historically Jewish club. My former student, as an Ajax fan, is furious about all this because, Israeli teams have occasionally come and played them in
Right.
friendlies. This is like inviting your weird cousin over to your house and them drinking all your beer, taking a dump on your, floor, and harassing all your neighbors who you get along with just fine.
Right.
So, hours before the match, the Maccabi Haifa fans effectively took over a main square in Amsterdam. And, they're doing the usual ultra things. But obviously, considering the context of the very real ongoing conflict in Gaza and, what's being done over there, they started tearing down random Palestinian flags from people's homes, by the way. Uh,
Right.
yeah. Uh, fucking with cab drivers who, if you've ever been to Amsterdam, they're largely from the Middle East.
Right.
You know, and then saying things like, let the IDF win, fuck Arabs. Okay.
Right.
And this is really disgusting. There are no schools in Gaza because there are no children left. This went on for like 3 or 4 hours before the match started. Then, when the match started, and this is what I mean, you have that, and then that was right after the floods in Spain. So they had the minute of silence.
Right.
They heckled the minute of silence. And when asked, eventually some of them said, well, no, our victimization is the only victimization. Oh, really? Caught you. Needless to say, the local population in Amsterdam, particularly the local Muslim, so Moroccans, Syrians, they just self-mobilized themselves and they fought back.
Right.
And I know some people who I don't understand full-on pacifists. I don't know what universe they live in. Your right to self-defense is the most essential right of any group and any people.
Hmm.
If you are being oppressed, if you are being threatened, you have the right to punch someone in the throat.
Right.
The context we just gave you, which is really important, when this news story broke, and if you read The Guardian, if you, God forbid, you read The Sun or anything like that, or even the New York Times, which, by the way, one of their reporters in the last week has come out and said, I had the real story. They told me not to publish it.
All that. Yep.
CNN, etc. It would appear that random Arabs and Ajax fans, because they took a beating from Ajax fans,
Yeah.
which again, it's a Jewish club. Man, you really are, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Randomly attacked these Maccabi Haifa fans, and this was an act of quote unquote random anti Semitism. Uh, Nothing is further from the truth.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, and Cam, you can have your say. The worst part of it is a lot of these news services use the term pogrom. That is a loaded term. That is a term with history. I'm an
Right.
historian. I'm an historian of Central and Eastern Europe where pogroms happened a lot. Shame on you. Shame on you. You should all like give up your right to journalism because that is morally, historically, goddamn responsible. This is
Right.
comparing what happened a couple weeks ago in Amsterdam to things that happened in Ukraine and in Poland in the late 19th century and the 20th century. That's irresponsible. That is
Yep.
irresponsible, and you should be checked and you should be forced to apologize because that's just wrong. Cam, you have your say.
Yeah. No, I mean, you summed it up fantastically. As you said, I mean, the news stories were, I remember when they came out and it was wild. And then, social media can have its negatives and its positives, but some of the positives coming out of it were that people that were actually there, that were seeing it, that were not biased either way and understood that something wrong was going on here and that the media wasn't reporting it correctly. So they took it upon themselves to do it. And honestly, that makes them a better journalist than someone
Yeah,
reporting bullshit news, to be honest with me. I don't care how they write, if they're reporting the truth, then they're a better journalist in my mind. Um, Seeing things like that, and then that's what really started to kind of pique people saying, are we getting the right stories here from our news outlets, the ones that we kind of base our lives around, over here in the US with everything that's happened politically? Um, and it was wild once it started coming out, between videos of what was actually going on. the stories of third parties and things like that in the country witnessing this, it was wild to me, the juxtaposition. And you're absolutely right. It really was it was, it was quite disgusting, to be honest. I think there's not a word strong enough. I'm trying
Sickening
to look for a stronger word, but
is truly sickening and
yeah,
maddening. And look, again, those of you who have ever watched this podcast, you guys know we talk a lot about the situation in Ukraine and the fact that, Russia isn't invited to these things anymore. And it's really weird. I look at the situation in Ukraine, I look at the situation in Palestine, and the similarities to me are they hit you in the face.
yeah,
And this is one of the reasons we're talking about this topic on this pod because both, particularly Celtic, uh, but Liverpool largely because, there used to be this thing called internationalism, where an injury to one was an injury to all,
right,
uh, and a commitment to, struggles of national liberation. Uh, Look, the Palestinian cause is our cause because we see in them ourselves. And as someone who is Irish American, but also Ukrainian and Polish American,
right,
the long history of our own freedom struggles against Russians and Germans and
yeah.
Austrians, I see this. Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu are the same person as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. I totally get that, and you're exactly right on. I mean, look at the number of Celtic games where we've got Palestinian flags waving. We've
Yeah,
almost got the same numbers of Palestinian flags as Celtic flags.
yeah. So I'm not suggesting, well, maybe we should think about it, why Israeli teams are here in the first place. And that story may be for a different day. Haha, I might be giving you a preview for something I'm doing in the new. But, and this goes back to the way that information is handled.
Hmm.
Can you imagine if, let's think of the most racist group of fans in Russia. Zenit were playing, I don't know, Tottenham. And Russian soccer hooligans said all kinds of outrageous stuff about Ukrainians and stuff in London and trashed, things. Every news outlet would be, Russian, racist Russian hooligans. Why do one group of fascist assholes get treated like fascist assholes and another group of fascist assholes don't get treated like fascist assholes?
Yeah,
That's the only question I'm asking.
yeah,
Why,
it's
why,
accurate.
why is there so? Is it because we like one group of them and we don't like the other group? Like, is that really what this is about? Because yeah, it's sickening, it's saddening, it's disorienting to me because I'm like, is my reality actually real? And
Right.
like, and again, the deliberate use of the word pogrom really bothered me because I teach that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is not a pogrom at all. And using that language deliberately, equates Moroccan, Dutch Moroccans and Syrians who are defending themselves from racist hooligans to, Cossacks and like the worst anti-Semitic, disgusting figures of the 19th and 20th century. And that's just not true because those are two very separate people.
Right. Right.
Now on to our last topic and one which I don't think will get us quite as angry because it's kind of weird. I've come,
Hmm.
first of all, the Nations League is over. Thank God. I am now officially over the Nations League, although I
Yeah.
do like the way that Poland approached it. Uh, because I think they approached it the correct way. I don't think we need three freaking international breaks in the fall. One,
No.
two at most would be fine.
Yeah.
So Poland and Scotland were in the same Nations League group, and neither of us are going anywhere. And in fact, we split the series. Poland won 3-2 in Edinburgh, I believe, right? Or was it Glasgow?
Glasgow. Yeah.
Glasgow. And then you guys beat us
No,
2-1.
it was Edinburgh. Sorry, you're right. You're right.
It
Yeah.
was Edinburgh. And then you guys beat us in Warsaw at the Crib 2-1 with a last minute wonder strike from Andy Robertson. Which I talk about mixed emotions.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure.
so and I've said this, and you'll have your chance to speak about Scotland, although I think there's a young Scotsman, two of us can talk a little bit about.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I said this. I think I've come to the conclusion we root for the same national team because both teams, I think there's a lot of really interesting things moving forward. And I'll talk about the way that the Polish FA handled these because I think they handled it the best way possible. But there's also giant holes and a lot of I can't believe I'm going to quote Donald Rumsfeld here. There are as many unknowns as there are knowns. So, Cam, what did you make of Scotland's campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I was overall, there were some really good games. I mean, tying with Portugal at home. That's for some countries that's maybe not as big of a deal. For a country like Scotland, ranked well below Portugal, I think was fantastic. I mean, overall, I think we are in a transition period. I believe, but I think we're at the tail end of this transition period, coming into a more steady state with the team that we're looking at. I mean, we've got people that have been in the team for God knows how long, people like Grant Hanley, who, God, I don't remember the last time I watched a national game but where he wasn't playing in it. I mean, he's got to be like 67 at this point in time. But, and then we've got people like, as you mentioned, Ben Doak, who is just the future. He's the
How
future.
all all of you not named Cam on this podcast, when I keep saying we should keep Salah, but there's a guy in house who in 2 or 3 years I think's going to be really good. This is
Hmm.
what I'm talking about. He, in terms of just the talent, the footballing IQ that is way ahead of his age,
Oh, yeah.
he's the real deal.
Yeah.
He's raw as hell, though. Like
Hmm.
in the match against Poland, you saw that because it was talent. It was he was like doing street ball.
Right.
He needs some seasoning. He's
Yeah.
having a very good loan spell this year at Middlesbrough. My hope
Right.
is, God willing, we re-sign Mo. Ben goes out again on loan, maybe to, Premier League side next year. And then 1 or 2 years left on Mo's deal, you have the understudy in place, and it's like,
Right.
okay, we now give him time because even in the little cameos he's had for Liverpool, he
Hmm.
affects the game. He doesn't always necessarily do the right thing, but he
No.
impacts the game positively.
Yeah, you see these sparks, these little
Yeah,
just, and they may only last a few seconds, but as you say, you can really get a feel for the footballing IQ that exists there. And you're absolutely right. Rough around the edges, need some sanding.
he sees shit before we see shit.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that, for a kid that young, that is impressive.
I completely agree. Yep. Yep. So, I'm really excited for him. I'm excited, Tommy Conway, who plays with him at Middlesbrough, another Scotsman. I'm excited for him as a future. He's a young kid. Do I have to mention Billy Gilmore, Scott McTominay, like, a little more seasoned than those other guys. And, playing at Napoli, right? Is it Napoli? Or
Yeah, he's with Conti now. Yeah.
yeah, right. So, we've got younger guys that are starting to come up. And I'm really excited, for the future. I'm hoping we can start climbing the ranks of, world football a little bit and get back to how we used to be. But, it'll take time. It'll take time. And I think that's kind of something what you're talking about Poland, this sort of transition that's occurring, and
I
we're
I,
seeing
I
that.
think you guys are a little further ahead in your transition.
Yeah.
Uh, Poland are you don't want to call it a golden generation because you didn't win anything, but it was the generation that for the first time since the 80s would qualify for tournaments regularly, would sometimes get out of the group stage, which was something on the rare occasions we did qualify in the
Hmm.
90s and the aughts we were incapable of doing. And
Right.
hey, this is kind of a big deal. This is the generation that took King Kong, aka Germany, who we had never beaten before, and took
Yeah.
that, took them off our back.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge deal.
For sure.
Uh we're beginning this transition, although I think maybe it began in the Euros. I loved how the Polish FA and the manager approached this tournament because it was like, look, we're not going to advance out of this. And even if we do, we're going to lose. We're probably going to lose in the next round. One of the reasons I now despise the Nations League is because I miss old school friendlies. Friendlies were important because friendlies allowed national team setups to experiment and to try new stuff out without fear. That's exactly how Poland treated this tournament. It's like these are six friendlies. We're going to have experimental lineups. We're going to, because the two matches against Poland, we're a three in the back team now. But the first time we played you, it was 3-4-2-1. So last time it was 3-5-2 with
Right.
almost completely different
Right.
personnel. Uh and this is important, and it's important too because look, Robert Lewandowski, who by the way, 100 Champions League goals today. Only two other people have ever done that. So just saying, he hasn't internationally retired. But the
Right.
FA was like, don't show up to any of these matches because we'll call you when we need you.
Right.
But life without Robert's coming. So we have to
Yeah.
figure out what the hell we have. So we got to see some Adam Buska. We got to see some Pavel Swiderski, who talk
Mm.
about a guy he needs seasoning. He can
Yeah.
do something. And I'm not 100% willing to totally give up on Christoph Piatek because he's still somehow only 25 years old.
Mhm.
And when he goes on these purple patches, he looks. Remember when he was at Milan and he had the most goals in Europe?
Yeah.
Like he runs hot and cold, but like
Right.
the talent's there, and if he ever had some stability at club level, you have to wonder what could be. So
Right.
you have to figure out what you're going to do at striker because let's be real, Arkavius Milik, he's done. He's done and good because he's never healthy for major tournaments anyway. So what's the point? Uh what I know and what I like is so we're a more pragmatic setup, but we have to be because we don't have the horses we had back in 2016, 2018.
Right.
Uh but we got mad wingbacks, and that's where we seem to be getting our creativity.
Yeah.
And like we're rolling mad deep. Like we have the repatriated one, Matty Cash, but he's the elder statesman. There's the kid I mentioned him before the Euros, Nicola Zalewski, uh, who plays in Italy, and Jacob Kuzminski, both of whom are only 22. And so like they can only get better.
Right.
And the one thing that's a little disconcerting is okay, like let's say we make it to the World Cup in 2026, which means
Sure.
I'm just going to have to go to some city where Poland's playing uh,
Yeah.
during that tournament. Part of the problem in the last couple tournaments has really been Levin, having Lewandowski's great, and let's say he's there in 2026.
Hmm.
It's getting the supply to him. We have defensive midfielders. We have wing backs now. We don't really have, and you really saw that in the first match against Scotland, where we played the single striker and then the two uh, attacking midfielders. Outside of Piotr Zielinski, who's not young at this point,
Yeah.
don't really have those creative guys. But and he only came on against Scotland for a cameo. Uh, but a name to watch out for. And again, it seems all these young Polish guys go play in Italy, which I guess is good food.
Yeah,
Uh,
Roma and things like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kasper Obronsky, 20-year-old out of Bologna. Uh, he gives me a little hope there because that's kind of been a black hole for the last couple tournaments. And I feel like a broken record whenever I talk about Poland on this podcast. I'm like, Lewandowski's fine. The back line and what we have out wide
Eating.
is fine. We
Yeah.
don't have creative players. I thought Sebastian Szymanski could have been that, but his career has gone goddamn sideways to the point that I don't even know if he should be on the national team. So, like, I think we're a little behind you, but I think I'm seeing a lot of the same things where I'm seeing a lot of young talent finally getting bludgeoned in. And this might take a while, right? We may have to sit a tournament out, but there's some hope there. And someone asked me, it might have been Rob actually, because for whatever reason he has this weird hate for our former goalkeeper, who is retired. Uh, excuse me. I'm not worried about that. Never in my life as a supporter of the Polish national team have I been worried about the goalkeeper.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Always been solid.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think we have something in Drakovsky. And the guy that you really should be watching out for is former Liverpool Academy guy, Camille Nabra, who's at Wolfsburg now. So like it I think the needle is pointing in the right direction. And I like the manager. I think the players like the manager. And we briefly lost our mind and we're like, we need a foreign manager because somehow they'll make us good. And that, I guess, circling back around to some topics we talked about today, that is a fucking that's a colonized mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our specialists aren't good enough, therefore the shiny things from Western
Right.
Europe have to be better.
Yeah.
That isn't true because you gave me goddamn fucking Santos. And
Right.
like, so no, the Polish guys are just as good, if not better than him. So I'm I like the direction we're going in. And needs to be said, for the first time in a long time, we have a young player of color.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's important on a lot of levels, but it's also showing what this latest, what the FA has been trying to do the last couple of years, where guys who have either played in Poland, which is the case in this kid, he spent his, whole career pretty much, playing in Poland, or people with any kind of Polish ancestry,
Hmm.
they're not good enough to make the Nigerian, American, you know, or
Right.
Matty Cash, the England team, right? You're the fifth choice right back, but you're pretty goddamn good. Hey,
Right.
your mom was Polish. Come here.
Yep.
So, it's interesting times. It's interesting times to be a Poland fan. It's a little scary because you know that period of sustained success is gone,
Yeah.
but it's also exciting at the same time because we've been screaming for some younger players to get put
Yeah.
to the squad. Like, don't get it twisted. I love Kamil Glick, but like Kamil Glick couldn't move at the last World Cup. Like,
Yeah.
actually immobile. Like, and it was like that's. I don't care how good a defender you are. Give the young men a chance. And
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing that. Uh, oh, this was good. Uh,
Yeah,
we covered everything we wanted to cover. Uh, so this is the first of hopefully several conversations. So Celtic and Scouse. And God willing, this will come out this week. Uh, and there's another vid that I recorded earlier that's a new Eastern Europe short, which should be coming out at the same time. And yeah, like I said, me and Cam will be continuing this conversation here on the pod, and maybe because I know what I'm doing with my historical shorts in on the other side of the new year. Maybe we could get Cam on one of those too, because I think his insights would be useful.
be awesome.
Anyway, uh, Cam, do you want to plug anything, say anything to the audience before we call it?
Yeah. No, I think this has been fantastic. You know, as you said, Professor Matthew, I hope this is the first of many. And to all our US listeners or those based in the US, have a happy Thanksgiving this week. And yeah, we'll hopefully be filling your ears again in the not too distant future.
Yeah, guys, those of you who are American have a wonderful holiday. Everybody else, be safe, be cool, peace it.